Greetings and welcome to another Stranded Deep update video for version 0.10 has arrived, and with it, farming. And this fella here, oh yes, that's right, I've got a body. So here I am on my scrap haulage barge that I built to move things from one island to another. It sort of works a little bit. It's got like a little divot in the middle here which helps for transporting goods loosely, although there are a few issues and glitches, as you would imagine. But that's not important right now because, of course, that is all part of the last update, whereas we're interested in the current update, which includes farming and, as I said, this fellow here. I've got a body and I appear to be wearing a tie. Frankly, if I was surviving on a desert island, I think I'd have taken off my tie by now. In fact, I might be using it for something other than having it around my neck, you know, like tying things together, or as a bandage, or as some kind of cool head bandana thing to make me look more badass, which of course is very important when you're surviving. One of the first things you'll notice about having a body is that it makes you much slower by default. I now walk around at a nice leisurely pace. Look, I've also got a very fancy pair of shoes on. I don't suppose those would last very long in this kind of environment, but they seem to be holding up all right now, and you know, I look kind of snazzy. Animations seem pretty decent, I have to say. The shadow, of course, is there as well now. Look, I've got a body and I've got a shadow. No longer will tools float in the air. Speaking of tools, of course, I can actually hold things in my hand. I've got sort of a curious way of swinging, but okay, that's fine. Speaking of moving around, by the way, yes, my default like slow amble is like the way that I get around, but I can hold shift to run about and to get around much more quickly, which of course is good, and that's still at a decent pace. I don't think there's any stamina added at the moment, or maybe there is. Should we try running back to the base? I mean, I was going to take the raft, but we could just run and see what happens. Alright, let's do it. We're going to run. We're going to run with the axe and see how far we get. In fact, whilst we're running with the axe, let's also swap to look. There we go. That's me holding a tarp. It makes it quite difficult to see what you're doing. What else have I got here? That's, I think, a big steel beam. There's a little bit of scrap. Look, he's kind of holding it like a shield or something, which is pretty cool. And what else have I got here? I've got a stick. There we go. I think that's probably all I've got in my pack. Here, of course, is the dock. All of my mini rafts seem to have disappeared. I don't know where they all went. There was a whole load of rafts here at one point, but they seem to have gone. Let's put that away for a second. I'm going to head all the way back to base, though, because, of course, the other thing that we need to look at is farming. Farming has come. Farming is probably the big... There has definitely been a texture update there as well. This looks completely different now. Look, that's a much more sort of stylized type of texture. It's almost kind of... it looks a little bit like a kind of tropical version of the Long Dark or something. I'm not sure if I like that. In all honesty, it certainly doesn't look right next to things like this, you know, like this old rock piece that you've got here. I suppose if it was all the same, it would look better. But I quite like the realistic look. I'm not sure if I really approve of this kind of cel-shaded look, or sort of like cartoony look. So I don't know. Hopefully that's just something they were experimenting with, and it somehow inadvertently made it into the live build. What am I looking for? I'm looking for stone that I can break. There we go. Okay, well, it seems to have gotten dark whilst I was faffing about getting the hoe together and things, so we'll just wait for dawn. I'll have a little bit of an eat and drink whilst I wait. Oh, I do like a little kind of like bop. It's like you're trying to bop somebody on the head. Look, have it. Oh, I can't do it because I'm no longer thirsty. I think I've also got some potatoes to eat. So eat a potato. It's like a little, have this. And then there's a crunch noise, and I've eaten it. Okay, placeholder animation, obviously. Placeholder animation there. Also, the potatoes look a little bit odd, don't they? It's kind of very shiny, and it has a seam. And if I'm not mistaken, I seem to have plunged my hand and thumb right through it. Oh, that was my watch. Anyway, let's just skip forward to dawn, shall we? And get on with the farming. Alright, so dawn has come here on the island, and I can craft some new wonderful stuff. First of all, I think I need to equip the hoe, which I think is also true now of building. You need to equip the hammer like you used to. And then we can go into farming. A hoe is required and needs to be equipped for farming. There you go. It is indeed. So we can build a plot, which looks like a foundation currently. Wood farming plot, plank farming plot, corrugated farming plot. Okay. Well, let's start with a wood farming plot, shall we? Put this down just like here. There we go. And now, as you can see, the potato plant and even the grass has not been cleared away, which probably should happen. I mean, it's not much of a farming plot if you haven't actually cleared away the ground to plant your things in. Let's build one of the other farming plots, because the other two farming plots are basically like kind of raised beds. So they actually are a little bit better. We'll do this one just on the sand. But as you can see, it's actually raised up off the ground considerably, so this will act to kind of mask ground cover and stuff a little bit, but I would still like to see it actively remove the ground cover, at least if you're going to keep in that sort of basic type. So the way farming works is you have to keep your farm plots watered and you have to plant a seed in them. Now, I didn't realize about the seed part, and I thought the water little droplets that you can see on the sort of like UI floating next to the farms indicated that it needed water, and I figured that maybe it would just grow automatically if I could water it. So I set about trying to find out how to water it. And I spend quite a bit of time doing this. I figured, let's just get the bucket, shall we? We'll try a bucket on it. I mean, a bucket's got to be the way that you water it, right? Even if the water bottle doesn't work. So I try sort of like activating it with it. No, that doesn't seem to do anything. We're still showing like 4 white dots or 5 white droplets. So then I think, well, maybe we kind of like put it on it and just tip it onto it. So we tip it over and, all the water comes out. And does anything change? No, it doesn't. And of course, the reason that nothing has changed is because we haven't planted a seed in this thing yet. Which, of course, we don't have, because the seeds come from a new type of plant, in fact, 2 new types of plants, which have been added in this update, and they're not on my island. And indeed, they're not anywhere in this save world, because there are no way to create fresh, random islands in your existing game. The only way to create new random islands is to completely recreate the game from scratch. So let's go and do that now. Let's squat on the raft. Alright, I've started a new game. This is how you drive rafts. You squat on them, and then just magically will the raft forward. I am willing the raft forward through the power of my squat to reach the shoreline. Look, there is a Boris out there in the water somewhere, but we care not about the Boris because we're too busy squatting upon our life raft to reach the shoreline. Of course, you don't need to see me running around and gathering all the materials I need to start the farm here on this new island, but this particular bit was quite interesting. Look, the crabs. Notice something different about them? I certainly did. They've got kind of a new yellow texture to them. And I think the reason for this is the devs have basically said this is part of a new universal system, they've called it. Where basically edible things and things that you can use to make, I guess, consumable, edible type things are all going to be yellow. Now, I had taken this to mean that the highlight around them would be yellow. Because look, here, the koara fruit. Again, it's yellow. The highlight around it was also yellow, so I thought maybe it's just a coincidence. Maybe they made the crabs yellow for some other reason. But no, it does seem genuinely like they have decided that all edible things are going to actually be yellow. Look, here we go, the koara fruit as well, that's yellow. And if you were still concerned, if you still thought, actually, no, it is just the highlight that's going to be yellow and it's just coincidence, everything highlights in yellow. I mean, everything, even like the like scrap metal and stuff. So unless they're planning on making scrap metal edible, then genuinely they're going to make all edible things yellow, which is, I mean, that's like an interesting idea. That's almost like a kind of, it's like one of these game dev ideas. It's like you establish a rule for your audience and you create an environment that they can understand, and then they can utilize that knowledge to kind of to exist within the environment. It's a fairly simple game dev principle, but I think it really works in this instance, and taken this literally to say that literally all foods in Stranded Deep are going to be yellow. Are all the fish that you're going to be yellow? Like, are they only ever going to add, what if they want to add, like, berries? Is it only going to be yellow berries? Look, here again, the coconuts. They're yellow. The coconuts are yellow. Yeah, they're kind of brownish yellow, but there's definitely a yellowness to them. So I'm not sure about that, Stranded Deep devs. I'm just going to say right now, I think maybe that is a bad idea. It's just a little bit forced and unnecessary. It creates a very strange game experience when you know that all foodstuffs in the game are going to be yellow. I mean, okay, we could add bananas, true, but not tomatoes, apparently, except for maybe yellow tomatoes. Anyway, that was just something that I kind of found slightly amusing and perhaps slightly worrying. Okay, so sometime later I had all the materials that I needed to craft a hoe, which I did. Hoe! And of course then I proceed to craft a new farm spot to try out. And because I've now got 2 whole fruits, count them, I've got something hopefully that I can actually plant here as well. So let's do that. We'll craft a wood farming plot. We'll just plump it down. I'm actually going to test the ground cover thing again here, look, a little bit. We'll just put it right on all this grass, which is a terrible idea, because now look, it just looks a mess. It looks a complete mess. It really does need to clear ground cover, which I would have thought would be fairly easy to do. But obviously it's something that needs to be implemented, and this is, to be fair, the first iteration, so we need to cut it a little bit of slack, but perhaps this should have been in the experimental build rather than on the stable branch, but I'm going to get to that. I'll talk about all of that a little bit later, I think. For now, as you can see, look, we can take take one of our yellow fruits, either of our yellow fruits, plant it, and there we go. Look, we now have a Kuara plant in there. Now, at this point, I'm kind of thinking, do I need to water it? There's like 5 white droplets there, but it doesn't seem to be accepting water from my water bottle. I kind of assume they just fill up in blue, but they do not, as you can see when I'm trying to water them from my water bottle. Did I drink from my water bottle? I'm wondering to myself. I try and shake it upside down, which obviously isn't going to work because it has the cap screwed on. So, you know, I think the only option right now is to go and find a bucket and to try out a bucket, which is what I do. And I search various wrecks, and eventually I find a bucket. Although in the process, I do discover this handy backstroke animation, and I get stuck on a rock in the process. But look at those trousers. For some reason, only my trousers seem to have suffered extensively from the process of surviving. Presumably, it's all those rocks that I get stuck on whilst I'm swimming around. Anyway, I make it back to my farms with my newly discovered bucket full of seawater. Which, of course, is a great idea to pour all over your plants. Anyway, look, I put it down just next to the farm because whilst I was away, it did occur to me that I might be reading this wrong. It might be that when you first create a farm, that it comes fully hydrated, so that is actually full. There are like 5 drops, which means it has 5 drops of water in it, and it is full. I was kind of assuming they'd be blue or something, but no, actually, as it turns out, this is correct. It is currently fully hydrated with 5 drops. And all I need to do is wait, and we will see that. So I quickly craft myself a bed, and I wait the night so that we can see in the morning the change. So here we are. Morning has broken, and indeed, look, already we can see that the plant has used 2 drops of the water and now only has 3 drops left. So there's a couple of important things to bear in mind from this. Oh yeah, I tried to water it with my water bottle, which does not work. Either there's no water in my water bottle, or it doesn't accept water from a water bottle. I'm not sure which is the case. Obviously it should accept water from a water bottle, but I suppose it's possible that it's just not programmed that way at the moment. So I pick up the bucket, my bucket of poisonous seawater, and I pour it all over my plant, and lo and behold, it fills up. It's now fully hydrated, and that plant will happily grow away there. So yes, the 2 things, what this means is that first of all, when you first craft the plot, you magically acquire some water from somewhere to fully hydrate it, to fill it with water. Which I suppose isn't that bizarre when you think about it, because you're also finding a whole load of like fertile soil to put in it, and other stuff. So, I mean, that's okay, I suppose. It's kind of a bit of a gamey thing. It would be nice if you had to water it after you had built it, which is what you would really have to do, obviously. The second thing is that it only actually consumes water whilst there is a plant in it. So the plant is actively sucking the water out of it, rather than the water just like escaping and evaporating. Which again, is maybe it would be nice if you actually had to, you know, if it would just use up water over time because it flows away. I don't know, I'm not sure. Anyway, I've now used the hoe on it, and that has obviously taken the plant out, but because the plant was immature, it takes a couple of days for a plant to grow to maturity. I don't get anything for it. I don't even get the seed back, so it's actually quite a loss doing that. You have to be really quite careful. Yeah, that seems to be it as far as the farming mechanic goes. Oh yeah, I take a look at this because I suddenly see a flash of yellow, but actually it's just a flower. But surely yellow means I can eat it, right? This is where you run into trouble, you see. When you establish a rule like that, you have to follow it through. Even if it doesn't make sense in the real world, if you've said that this is the way that it is in the game world, then, you know, people will then latch onto that, and It's an issue, okay? I think that's something that needs to be rethought. Anyway, look, that's just my opinion. As far as the farming system goes, generally speaking, it's pretty good. It's a good first implementation. Obviously, there's some mechanics that need to be added. I think the way you operate the hoe, like, I think you should have to use a hammer to build the plot, right? Not the hoe. And then you should have to use the hoe on the plot to maintain it and to stop weeds from growing in it. That's what a hoe does, right? You use a hoe to kind of loosen the soil and to make sure that you get like all the weeds and stuff out and allow it to grow that way. And then maybe harvest it with the hoe as well, just for simplicity. But yeah, there we go. It's an okay first iteration. There's only the 2 plants that you can grow right now. It takes a couple of days to grow them, and then when you have grown them, if you don't harvest them in time, they will die, and then you will effectively lose them. If they've got a fruit on them, the fruit will hang around for a while, but it'll go rotten if you don't harvest it too soon. So it adds a nice anchor to your base, actually, having this. Although, of course, they're going to have to rejig things if they're going to want to make farming worthwhile, because it's so easy to acquire food in Stranded Deep once you get yourself a little bit set up. I mean, there's coconuts everywhere, there's fish in the sea, the crabs are an incredibly abundant foodstuff. So I would expect to see some balancing there with the new farming system coming in to maybe make other foodstuffs less available, so that you become more reliant on farming in order to have a steady source of food. But this is kind of my issue a little bit with Stranded Deep. In these last few months, it's been great to see all these updates, don't get me wrong, and I'm really happy to see the development kind of kick-started again in Stranded Deep. But it all feels a little bit bitty, and it feels like everything that new comes in a kind of half-finished state or in an incomplete state, and we're not actually seeing the kind of polished experience that actually we saw when this game first came out. Yeah, it was fairly simple, but everything that was in the game worked pretty well and was pretty well polished and made sense within the context of the game, more or less. The temperature system kind of came in and never really did anything other than when you dove really deep in the sea. So maybe that was sort of like a first hint of this sort of thing, but I think, for me, what the devs need to do is they need to focus on tying these systems together into a compelling game experience, and then kind of add new features and new bits and pieces into the experimental build whilst they're unfinished, and whilst you're still figuring out how to balance them and what different things need to be implemented. For the farming system to go into the stable branch, I think it should be more finished than this, and they should have finished and tied together the other game elements as well. Early access, for me anyway, doesn't mean a license to release unfinished things and placeholder systems, and early access is still meant to be a playable game experience. It's just that it's going to get better over time. If you look at something like Kerbal Space Program or other successful early access games, at every stage, what was in the game worked as a game, and you could play it and get a really satisfying game experience, albeit you didn't have all the features that you would eventually see in the game. But whenever they introduced a new feature, it was in a complete and playable form. You didn't have these kind of like lots of little half-implemented bits and pieces, which is where I think Stranded Deep is going wrong at the moment. But anyway, there you go. That's just my opinion on the way that I think early access should be done. If you've enjoyed this video, that's pretty much it as far as the 1.0 update goes. If you've enjoyed this video, please hit the like button. If you haven't subscribed to my channel already, then check it out. You might like it. But until next time, thanks a lot for watching, everybody. I have been Weird Wizard, and I will see you later.